Bread. Bread. Almost every culture has a bread made from some sort of flour and water. Some breads are easy to make, require just a few ingredients, while others are much more challenging. For many, bread is that comfort food. When life is challenging, bread of one type or another is where many of us go for solace. And for many of us, the meal is not complete unless there is bread of some sort at the table. In today's lesson, Jesus tells us what? Jesus says, I am the bread of life. In 2018, I had the opportunity to go on sabbatical for 3 months. And for 6 weeks of that time, I went on my own off to France. I spent 2 weeks in the south of France, in Lyon, which is part of that time in Lyon, which is the gastronomic capital of France. Need I say more? And then I spent a month in Paris. I had a little apartment in the Marais. And can we talk about bread? Oh my goodness. Now, in France, it is le baguette that is the staple of every meal, that long, thin loaf with a crispy crust. You try saying that, crispy crust. And when you go to the boulangerie to buy baguette, you always buy 2. Do you know why? One is to take home for the meal, and the other is to eat on the way home. And no one will know that it's missing. Now, there were five amazing boulangeries in my immediate Paris neighborhood. And after eating baguette from all 5 of them, I chose my favorite. And it came from a place called Paul's. Paul's, there you go. And in the beginning, I thought Paul's was just unique for my neighborhood. But when I started looking around, I realized that Paul's was like Dunkin' Donuts. And there was one everywhere. They were in the subway. They were outdoors at the Tuileries. They were everywhere. And but in my neighborhood, Paul's was little. And my guy, who I bought my baguette from, he was Monsieur Paul. So, of course, I thought that they were unique for me. But they were not. But their baguette was just wonderful. And for me, it was the best of all the other ones I tasted in my neighborhood. Now, you need fairly perfect conditions to make baguette. You need the right kind of flour, the correct temperature, the right amount of time to allow the bread to rise. You need strong arms to do all that kneading, and the ability to make those perfect cuts in the top of the loaf, and you do that with a razor blade, a single-sided razor blade. And then you need the right space. And some have special stoves or ovens, but others have that room, and they put water either in the stove, in the oven, or in the room, and it makes the steam, which makes the crusts crispy. In my time in Paris, I took a whole bunch of cooking classes, and one of those cooking classes was on making baguette. There was something about using my hands and feeling them in the dough that was both cathartic and rewarding. Jesus said, I am the bread of life. In 2011, my Rhode Island church joined with the local Catholic church, and we started a food pantry. A big part of that ministry was a program of food rescue and distribution. In our food pantry, we served about 90 families throughout the year, 90 different families. But in this food rescue and distribution, it was much, much bigger. We got food from all sorts of places. We got them from grocery stores, and then places like BJ's. There was a big warehouse, not the one you go to, but the one where the big trucks go to. And we got so much food from them. And even from our friends at Whole Foods, we got food from them twice a week. And we used not only this food in the food pantry, but we shared it with many other food pantries and soup kitchens and housing complexes in the area. We found that we gathered and shared about $300,000 worth of products every year. And it became a huge, huge operation. It took about 40 volunteers for us to make that work. And it all started with bread. Over the years, the amount of bread we rescued was amazing. Some months we had upwards of 1,300 to 1,500 loaves of bread or bags of rolls that we shared. And there were times when we didn't think we would have enough bread to meet all the needs. And yet, amazingly, we never ran out. We always had enough. Now, sadly, this program stopped in 2020 because of COVID. And we hear the words, "I am the bread of life." Hungry. What does it mean to be hungry? We know about physical hunger. We bring in food here for those in need. We work at the dwelling place. Some of us might remember those very challenging times in our lives when we might have had to go hungry so that our children would have something to eat. Perhaps we ourselves might have visited food pantries or have accepted food baskets. We don't have to look far to find those who are physically hungry. Within our country, we learned from the good people at Feed America that in 2019, 1 in 9, or 10.9% of individuals, and 1 in 7, or 14.6% of children, lived in food insecure households. And then there is emotional hunger. The need to be with people, to connect, to have someone care or notice. The hunger for family, the hunger for friends. In the work I did with Boston's homeless, I met a man named Steve who had recently become homeless. And he said the hardest part was that no one was waiting for him at the end of the day. He was so totally alone that he felt that no one would notice if he completely disappeared. I am the bread of life. And finally, if not most importantly, perhaps our deepest hunger can be the hunger for God in our lives, the hunger for Christ in our lives, the hunger that the fellowship that comes to us through our relationships with God, that hunger. It can be just as real, if not more so, than physical hunger. We can have full to overflowing cupboards and still be hungry. We can have the most yummy breads that can be found and still be hungry. Hungry for God's love. Again, hungry to have Christ in our lives. What does Jesus promise us in today's scripture? Jesus says that He is the bread of life. And those who believe in Him will never be hungry, will never thirst. I don't believe that Jesus is talking about physical hunger here. I believe that what Jesus is promising is that He will always be with those who believe in Him. That Jesus will feed our spirits, our souls, so that we will never be lonely or empty.